You don't vaporize a 20-foot wooden dinghy with a $150,000 Hellfire missile because you're looking for cocaine. You do it because you don't want any witnesses. Listen to me. Turn on the TV right now. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. What are they screaming about? They're screaming about an app. Signal. They're hyperventilating because Secretary Hegseth used an encrypted messaging service to talk to his team. They want you focused on his phone habits. They want you debating record retention acts and cyber protocols. That is noise. That is chaff designed to jam your radar. Here is the raw intelligence they are scrubbing from the scroll. We have U.S. Navy assets conducting double-tap strikes on survivors treading water. 87 confirmed kills. 0 arrests. 0 trials. I spent 25 years hunting bad guys. You double-tap Al-Qaeda in a war zone. You don't double-tap smugglers in the Caribbean, unless the mission profile has shifted from law enforcement to extermination. You need to understand the game being played here. You are not a subscriber to a YouTube channel. You are an asset in an information war. If they can normalize kinetic strikes on civilians 12 miles off the coast without a declaration of war, how long until that engagement zone moves onto the beach? The media calls this the Hegseth email scandal. In the Bureau, we call this a limited hangout, admitting to a procedural screw-up to cover up a war crime. Here is what they are hiding. All right, pull up a chair. Let's run the tape on what the official channels are selling you. If you turn on the morning briefing, CNN, Fox, the BBC, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet. The headline is a Signalgate. They've got panels of experts hyperventilating because Secretary Hegseth used the Signal app, an encrypted messenger, to communicate with his field commanders. They're clutching their pearls about the Presidential Records Act. They're talking about data retention protocols and unsecure devices. They are framing this as a story about bureaucratic incompetence. They want you to think Pete Hegseth is just a cowboy who played fast and loose with his iPhone settings. Don't swallow that bait. Spit it out. Here is the glitch in the matrix. Here is the anomaly that should set off every alarm bell in your head. The boat strikes happened on September 2nd. That was 3 months ago. The Pentagon has known about the use of the Signal app since day one. So ask yourself, why is this leaking now? Why specifically on December 8th? Does a bureaucracy sit on a scandal for 90 days out of the kindness of its heart? No. I'll tell you why. Because rumors of a war crimes tribunal regarding the double-tap strikes, shooting the survivors in the water, started circulating on the dark web 48 hours ago. In the Bureau, we call this flooding the zone. I saw this exact play back in '08 during a counter-terror op that went sideways in Europe. We had a massive intelligence failure. People died who shouldn't have. You know what the agency did? They leaked a story about the station chief having an affair with a staffer. The press ate it up. For 2 weeks, the headlines were about sex and morals. Nobody asked about the botched raid. Nobody asked about the bodies. That is what is happening right here. Look at the timeline. If the boat strikes were clean, if the kill order was lawful, they wouldn't care what app he used to send it. You don't burn a Secretary of Defense over a text message unless you need a scapegoat for something much, much darker. So, ask yourself the question the anchor won't. If the strikes were legal, why are they terrified of us seeing the unredacted comms? A man with a clean conscience doesn't need an auto-delete timer on his messages. They aren't mad he used Signal. They're mad he left digital fingerprints on a wet job. Time to put on the gloves. We're going past the headlines now. We're going into the evidence locker. Standard investigative procedure number 1, cui bono. Who benefits? Whenever you see a government operation that makes zero financial sense, you aren't looking at a mistake. You're looking at a transaction. Look at the munitions. The Navy is using AGM-114 Hellfire missiles to sink these boats. That is a precision-guided air-to-surface weapon. The price tag? About 150 grand per unit. The target? A wooden lancha, a glorified fishing boat made of plywood and fiberglass, worth maybe $2,000 on a good day. Do the math. We are spending $150,000 to blow up $2,000 of infrastructure. If this was a war on drugs, the ROI is bankrupt. But if you are the defense industrial base, if you are Raytheon or Lockheed Martin, This is the golden goose. The Middle East has cooled down. The contracts were drying up. The machine needs to eat, and it needs a new menu. I want you to pull up the stock tickers for the major defense contractors starting September 3rd, the day after the first strikes. See that spike? That isn't a coincidence. That is the market reacting to a new theater of war opening up in our backyard. They aren't sinking drug boats. They are burning inventory to justify next year's budget request. Now, pause the video right here. Seriously, hit pause. I'm putting a map of the Ops Southern Spear strike zones on the screen. Look at the clusters. Now, look at the jurisdiction lines. Tell me in the comments, what do you see missing? I'll tell you what's missing: the United States Coast Guard. The Coast Guard is law enforcement. They arrest people. They seize drugs. They have rules of evidence. The Navy? The Navy is war. When you swap out a Coast Guard cutter for an Arleigh Burr-class destroyer, you aren't trying to stop a crime. You are trying to erase an enemy. Now, let's profile the players. This is where the body language gives away the game. Everyone is looking at Secretary Hegseth. He's loud. He's brash. He's on every talk show. He is what we call a lightning rod. His job is to stand on the roof and get hit so the house doesn't burn down. He's waving that Signal app scandal around like a red cape. But I want you to look at the man in the background. Admiral Mitch Bradley. Watch the press clip from yesterday's briefing. Watch his hands when the reporter asks about the double tap strikes, the allegation that they circled back to kill the survivors. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't deny it with his chest. He engages in what we call distancing behavior. He touches his tie. That's a self-soothing mechanism, a subconscious sign of anxiety. Then he uses the passive voice. He says, engagement protocols were followed, instead of, I ordered the strike. Passive voice is the refuge of the guilty. And look at his eyes. He blinks rapidly when he says protocols. In an interrogation room, that's a tell. It's cognitive load. His brain is working too hard to keep the lie straight. Hegseth is the distraction. Bradley is the operator. Hegseth is being set up to take the fall for the sloppy comms, while Bradley walks away with a promotion for protecting the homeland. You aren't watching a scandal. You're watching a cover-up in real time. And the thing they are covering up isn't a text message. It's the fact that for the first time in history, we are treating the Caribbean Sea like a free-fire zone. You have to understand, the people running this show, they don't have imagination. They have a playbook, and they have been running the same play since the Cold War. There is a concept in intelligence called the Overton window. It's the range of ideas the public is willing to accept. If you want to move that window, if you want to make the unacceptable acceptable, you don't do it all at once. You do it by inches. You do it by changing the language. Look at what they did with Tren de Aragua. For years, they were a criminal gang. That is a law enforcement problem. That means FBI, DEA, warrants, arrests, trials. That means rights. But the moment the White House designated them a foreign terrorist organization, the rules of the game changed. You don't arrest terrorists, you neutralize them. By changing one label, they bypassed the entire American judicial system. They swapped handcuffs for hellfires. I've seen this before. I sat in the briefings in 2011 when the drone wars expanded. Back then, they sold it to us as surgical strikes against high-value targets in Yemen. But then the definition shifted. We started doing signature strikes. We weren't targeting a specific terrorist anymore. We were targeting military-age males who behaved like terrorists. If you stood in a group, if you drove a certain truck, you were a target. They are doing the exact same thing in the Caribbean. They are establishing a pattern of life as a death sentence. A boat moving north at night? Strike it. No radio? Strike it. This is the psychological warfare component. They are training you. They released that footage of the boat exploding for a reason. And it wasn't to brag. It was to desensitize you. They want you to watch a boat full of human beings get vaporized and think, good, they were criminals. They want to strip away your empathy so you don't notice that due process just died at sea. This is the us versus them game. The elites in the Pentagon and the intelligence community view the Constitution as a suggestion, not a mandate. They think you are too soft to do what needs to be done. They think they have to trick you into safety. That is why they are feeding you this Signal app nonsense. It is the classic Hegelian dialectic. Create a problem, the leak, reaction, outrage over security, solution, more control, more secrecy. They want you arguing about encrypted apps and email servers. They want you focused on the medium of the message, so you never stop to question the morality of the order. Don't fall for the trap. When they tell you to look at the scandal, look at the silence. The scandal is the distraction. The silence is the body count. They did it in Vietnam with the Phoenix program. They did it in the war on terror with enhanced interrogation. And they are doing it now with Operation Southern Spear. The geography changes. The technology changes. But the lie? The lie is always the same. They tell you it's for your safety, right up until the moment they turn the surveillance tools on you. So what is the final verdict on case file, Southern Spear? The verdict is that the Rubicon has been crossed. The distinction between war and policing is gone. We are now in an era where the executive branch can use military ordnance to solve domestic policy failures, and they will use scandals like this Signal app nonsense to keep you looking the other way while they do it. Here is my prediction. You need to write this down. It is December 9th, 2025. By March of 2026, you are going to see this hot pursuit doctrine expand. The Caribbean was the test bed. The southern border is the destination. Watch for the terminology to shift. They will stop calling them migrant caravans and start calling them logistical support columns for foreign terrorist organizations. Once that language changes, we will see the first drone strikes on vehicles inside the buffer zone of the US-Mexico border. They will tell you it's to protect the homeland. They will tell you it's limited. Do not believe them. Once the military is allowed to operate on domestic soil, they never leave. So how do you prepare? First, learn the lesson Pete Hegseth is learning the hard way. There is no such thing as a private conversation on a digital device. If they can burn the Secretary of Defense using his metadata, imagine what they have on you. Scrub your digital footprint. If you don't need it, delete it. If it's smart, unplug it. Second, watch your assets. When the government designates a group as terrorists, they gain the power to freeze bank accounts linked to that group without a warrant. If you donate to a charity, if you support a cause that gets flagged, your money is gone. Cash is king for a reason. Keep some on hand. The next 3 months are going to be volatile. This Signal scandal will fade, but the Hellfire missiles are here to stay. I don't do this for the algorithm. I do this because I took an oath to the Constitution, and that oath doesn't expire just because I turned in my badge. If you want to stay ahead of the narrative while everyone else is sleepwalking, you know what to do. Stay vigilant. Trust no one.